practices. And yet, there are many religions, Christianity included, which have founding principles of nonviolence, compassion, and peaceful understanding between people firmly in place. These principles, these ideals, are set aside very soon as the religion seeks to carve a space for itself within the official government and the society it is settled into. The emphasis becomes growth, more members, more concessions from the government, and more recognition. Along with such worldly preoccupation frequently comes a strong movement to suppress dissent from within and without, to prosecute and persecute heretics and unbelievers. Very soon the religion begins participating in war sponsored by the state, often enthusiastically. Violence, greed, and pursuit of power have often been justified by well-educated and intelligent theologians of many religions. Reason is suppressed in favor of superstition, logic and science are denigrated, and belief in outdated and illogical and violent practices put forward. I have singled out Zen Buddhism in this lecture as an example because of its participation in Japan's wars is well documented, and that cooperation was concentrated enough to deal with in our limited time. But after this glance at Buddhism, one can see that it is a religion just like any other. Religion has an almost built-in danger of departing from its early principles and becoming a powerful force of superstition, obfuscation, cruelty, and violence. There are a few religions that do not fall victim to egregious practices despite their superstitious and transcendental beliefs, but such exceptions have been very rare historically. I wanted to expose Buddhism's flaws and corruption particularly because too many people in the West have been taken in by Buddhist spokespersons. These proponents claim that Buddhism is a peaceful, life-affirming religion. It certainly was and is in its principles. Our investigation during this lecture has demonstrated that in practice, it is no better than any other religion. I would like to close with a quote from Martin Marty at the University of Chicago. One must note the feature of religion that keeps it on the front page and in prime time. It kills. Thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
It kills.
Thank you.
Well, we should take a break.
Okay.
First, if anyone wants to go to the bathroom, it's
somewhere, but I'm sorry.
Oh, honestly, I have some friends that are in the New Age, and they're really smart. I mean, there's a cut. I think that there's some kind of what am I trying to say? Cutoff where you can be like really smart in the topic that you're in or something, and then you can believe
And you go
something
over to,
Yeah.
really crazy.
Yeah, my uncle was a chemist at Shell Oil, very smart man, but he was an Orthodox Jew. I mean, he had two separate ways of
doing
moving
things,
through the
yeah.
world.
They compartmentalize. Yeah.
Oh, we all do that.
It's funny, now that I've been looking into, like, can I possibly do this Noah's flood, and everything. I understand that there's a lot of, geologists that are working with, the oil companies and what have you, and they just dismiss any ideas of the flood and these formations because they couldn't do their job, from what I've been reading. But they believe everything else in Christianity. So they've compartmentalized. I mean, of course, nobody really believes in the flood. That's blah blah blah. But they believe other ridiculous things. So, how they do it, I don't know. In fact, I was reading that some of the first guys that dismissed this flood idea were they were like biblical geologists, and then they found out it didn't hold up. But they didn't stop them believing in everything else.
Oh, Monday. Did I hear you say or suggest that at the heart of Christianity, the principles are more in the lines
we're doing it.
of cooperation?
I think at the very, very, very beginning, I think that there was, you know, a sense of, you know, remember it was a religion for the slaves, for the poor, and I think that there was a sense, it went quickly.
You were very generous, though, in your comments about Christianity, but
Do you think so? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think I think that there are some, you know, like ideals.
yeah, but I think it only makes sense to by comparison of one religion to another. But if you take it by itself, I mean, Christianity is also violent, inspired
Yeah.
violence.
Oh
as
my
well.
goodness.
Yeah,
But
horrible.
if you want to compare it, I'm not going to object to compare one to the other and say this one has more of this or more of that.
Okay.
But I think, is that what you're getting at, Pete? Is
Yeah,
that Christianity has-
that took me aback. I just,
Well, I'm sorry.
But,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You don't feel that that's the case, then? I mean, I'm
no,
open to this.
I would have said, without giving it much thought, that if we're gonna judge by the abstract principles enunciated at the origin of the religion, I'd give the nod to Buddhism over Christianity.
Okay.
Not that those abstract principles govern the actual development of the religion in the real
They
world.
sure don't.
Uh,
They sure don't.
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, there were some principles that were, it seemed like they supported environmentalism and things
Yeah.
that I would say that's good stuff. Now, if
Yeah.
you had to tell a lie to get someone to behave properly, it's all the right things for all the wrong reasons kind of thing. It seems somewhat manipulative, and that in the service of good is just the other side of the coin of serving government-sponsored war.
Yeah.
To my way of thinking, it's not the fault of religion that people go to war. It's more a sense of, I don't know how to put it down here, but it's more the problem that the human mind can be misdirected. And that I think that, and this is my feeling on religion in general, that it's kind of untruth. And people outsource their truth. And when you do that, you're susceptible to untruth. And so if you are not finding your own and verifying truth and so forth, as long as you let someone else spoon feed it, it's not necessarily the doctrine that's at fault, it's the weakness of the human mind, which seems to just be pervasive in human culture. That's why religion to me is so pervasive. There's
But the
untruth
James,
abounds.
the James would be safe to say never inspired war,
No.
right? You know, the Jain religion
Yeah.
of India,
Mhm.
you know, extreme pacifism, and they have some nutty ideas, but
Yeah.
they never
Yeah,
inspired
that's
someone to
crazy.
say, I'm going to, you know, fight for Jainism and.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I imagine.
Oh, give them time.
Yeah, yeah, they'll do it.
But I
Yeah.
mean, you can argue that, and as so many have it. I mean, Hitler. This is the first time I heard the concept of Hitler being or Nazis being associated with Buddhism.
Right.
Because
well, they
my
really were. It's
understanding
just
was
that the
Lutheranism.
Japanese government, you know.
But Lutheranism kind of, and what was it on Jews and their lies? Martin Luther's writings,
Yeah.
which stated the 9 steps to kind of exterminate Jews. And I mean,
Yeah.
there was, and that along with
Good old Luther.
what was the scientific basis they had for it on evolution or whatever.
The race, you mean the racist,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, pseudoscience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they
So
were
they
inferior.
based
Yeah.
those
yeah.
get that stuff, those kinds, and so I guess where was I going with that? That
About Germany and.
KKK says they're a religious organization. You know,
I didn't know that.
yeah. I mean, they're just
Oh, yes, they are.
Christians and yes, and
Well,
Nazis
they
are.
believe
And,
that. Yes, the KKK.
and so when I hear that like
Yeah.
kamikazes are a religious organization, or were, I also understood that kamikazes were addicted to methamphetamine. I don't remember what Buddha wrote
Oh,
about
yeah, I don't.
methamphetamine. Since he said
I
he
have
wrote
a hunch
nothing,
he said no.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean they kind of doped the boys up to,
they were
to
like,
do their thing.
on meth, yeah.
Is that right?
No, I
they
wouldn't
were.
be surprised, yeah.
So
Our bomber pilots
So they'd fly.
during World War II
far distances.
took meth.
Did our bomber pilots do
Yes.
that?
they
Okay,
did
so
have
you
to-
know
The missions were repetitive. They were so the downtime was so short on the bombing runs that frequently they would get into it to
stay
set
away.
themselves up.
So all I see is government that uses any tool they can get their hands on,
Sure.
whether it is the weakness of the human mind or propaganda arts or chemicals or brainwashing, whatever it is they've got to do to achieve their goals, which have nothing to do with the goals of a specific religion belief,
But
which should
But,
preach.
so are you
But
defending
what happens
the
is that the
Buddhists, or are
religion,
you?
No, I'm just breaking the link between Buddhist doctrine, because you mentioned something, and maybe you can clarify this. He never advocated killing,
no,
but
you're right.
until harmony and balance are achieved, killing would be necessary.
Yeah.
So he was stating a condition of the universe, or he was saying kill until
Oh no,
it
he
gets
never
right.
he never said go out and kill.
Okay, so his doctrine really was never kill.
Yeah, never kill.
So
Yeah.
whenever you say the government used Buddhism, it wasn't really Buddhism they were using.
Well, it was Buddhism that they were using, though. I mean, that's what the religion had become. I mean, a religion, you know, it's the founder may have like these peaceful ideas, and very quickly this changes. I mean, you know, the minute that Jesus died, if he even lived, which, you know, was he a
Granted.
historical person? But say that he was for the sake of argument. It was very shortly after that Paul started to, you know, formulate dogma.
Yeah.
And then we got into a, you know, more intolerant, you know, anti-sexual, you know, and all kinds of, you know, it's a very sex negative religion.
No sooner does the wise man leave than the idiots start writing about what he really meant.
Yeah, exactly. A founder. But the
founder,
problem
yeah.
is, you know, we don't know if Jesus existed or not.
Yeah.
As a historical person.
Did you also say that
Pardon?
Did you also say that there was a 400-year gap between anything being written about Buddhism and when Buddhism?
Well,
I
the
missed-
tenets being written down. Yeah,
Okay.
there was a 400-year gap.
400 years, yeah.
Yeah, they chanted it.
oral tradition.
Yeah,
So-
they chanted it in an oral
Okay.
tradition in Pali.
So Chinese whispers for 400 years, and
Yeah.
we think it's accurate now.
Well, see,
Buddha,
this
yeah.
is the thing. Most of this
Yeah.
stuff, it's.
So he may have been a myth too, like Jesus.
You know, there's some talk about that. Yeah.
He
Yeah,
might have been
so
Jesus.
he might have been a
so
myth too. I think a lot of these, you know, like founders of religions, a lot of times are a myth. You know, it's hard to tell. George Wells, who's an expert on Jesus, he kind of believes that Jesus was probably a historical person, but like there were so many guys running around at that time with these religious ideas and things, and he was probably of little importance. You know, and I kind of tend to that.
I tend toward the historical
Thinking.
figure.
Yeah, I do too. You know,
Not
I know
very
a lot
well
of atheists
represented
think
by
now.
the written work.
But Richard Price now, who's like a real expert again on Jesus and has done an enormous amount of research, and I really respect his scholarship, he's tending to the fact that he didn't, you know, exist. So I don't know really.
Dalai Lama, can you tell us anything about the Dalai or the string of Dalais? And
No,
He
no.
likes steak,
Yeah, he does, because they're
and he
Tibetan.
especially
Well
likes
done.
filet
They're
mignon.
Tibetans, and they the New Yorker
Right.
wrote a funny article once, and they said that they were ordering from, you know, his suites in his hotel, and they were ordering, I think what happened was the hotel was sending up vegetarian food.
that smells like it.
Yeah, what? And they said, you know, steaks, you know, for the Dalai Lama, he needs to keep his strength up.
Oh,
But they're not vegetarians.
But he is a
Tibetans.
Buddhist, right? I mean, he's-
Yeah. But
So, can you comment on what he would he say that it's a religion? Would he say that
oh yeah, I'm sure of it.
Buddhism
I'm
is a
sure of
religion?
it. Yeah.
he was?
It's, you know, I did read, I don't know a lot about him. I have some friends who swear by him, and every time he has spoken in Detroit or anywhere near Ann Arbor, they've rushed off to hear him, and I just never have. But what am I trying to say? I noticed that there was a book where it was a compilation of scholars. It's a short little book. It's in my you know, bib. But what he was like what he said was like, if we find that science has certain, like precepts and truth, we have to put aside, our beliefs and go with science. This sounds very good, everything like that. But yet, in this same book, I found him carrying on about reincarnation. Yeah.
Saying it was true?
Yes,
Yeah?
he
Wow.
implied that it was true, and he even implied something that I'll be covering when I think actually I have covered it with immortality in part 2. Yeah, if you want to go back and look at my lecture, these kids in India that recall their reincarnations, and it's been found to be ridiculous. In fact, a Western a psychiatrist helped move this along, and it's ridiculous. And the Dalai Lama was citing things like that. There's people that can remember the reincarnations. There's children. How do we explain all this? And it's just all hooey,
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't think that much of him. I really don't.
And he doesn't support gay rights in the
That
sense,
I
in the-
didn't
in the
know.
Western sense of
I didn't
being able
know.
to marry and all that. He doesn't want to oppress them,
Yeah.
but he doesn't want gay marriage.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, there's this mystique around him that he's simply a man of peace and
Yeah, this wonderfully wise.
simplicity and all
Yeah,
of that, wonderfully
yeah.
wise, the words
Yeah.
to live by. But then you take away that frock and you see this nonsense behind it.
Yeah, he's a religious believer like, anybody else, and he's a proponent of it. It's very hard, I think, if you're a Buddhist, although I know a lot of American Buddhists that say that, we don't pay any attention to reincarnation. Well, we're not interested in that. Well, it's one of the linchpins of the religion.
Well, then let them be only half Buddhist.
Yeah, I get,
I mean, I don't
Half
see what
Buddhist.
the
There
problem
you
is
go.
there.
Well, the problem is they're sitting there claiming that Buddhism is an important
yeah,
philosophy.
Yeah.
That it has relevancy for the modern world, and you couldn't say, well, discard half of it, but
it's like
not Buddhism.
Christianity. Which part do you discard?
Yeah.
There's a
I
few
mean-
gems in that pile.
Yeah.
Who is it?
When is it no longer Buddhism or any religion?
We no longer stone people for opening businesses on Sunday.
Yeah, so we discard that part of the Bible then, but what
We no longer slay disobedient children.
sometimes
Speak
if
for
you look at it,
I'm not
they
saying we
do,
don't
they
want
do.
to.
Yeah.
They do though. There's a website that shows how many, like the amount of children. It's in my thing on ethics. Okay, and there's a website that you can look at, and it shows how many children are mistreated and die through their parents' religious beliefs. They track it. It's very interesting.
What
It's-
website is it?
It's under my thing on AtheistScholar.org under atheist ethics. At the very end when I talk about cruelty to children
Okay,
and religion oppressing children, it's that section.
all right.
Yeah.
For those though who want to say, no, Buddhism is my philosophy, how would you compare that with, say, the Western understanding of what a philosophy is? So is it legitimate to claim Buddhism as a philosophy?
No, that's what I approached in my beginning. It fits all the criteria of a
Of a
religion,
religion.
and many Buddhist theologians agree with that.
But if I'm under stress and I say, well, I return to the Buddhist teachings when I'm under stress so that I can manage my life better, how would you respond to that, as opposed to just say, well, when I'm under stress, I take a rational approach to what's going on and I make choices to improve my outcome, so that I have less stress? Why is that different than the Buddhist way of handling stress?
Well, yeah, this is my understanding from friends, okay, that when they meditate, they can, concentrate, their mind and stop it from racing around. I mean, there's techniques so that you stop that, so you kind of get a stillness.
Stillness, yeah.
Yeah, and you in that still place, you can maybe make some decisions after you come out of it and what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried meditation. It never works for me. I can't still my mind.
You didn't try hard enough.
Yeah, well, that's what they keep telling me. They do.
Maybe
They
you
do.
gotta quit trying.
Yeah, maybe that. Well,
you tried too hard.
You're trying too hard.
You're thinking
There's
about not
always
thinking.
some reason, but I'm a person that believes in measuring things, so,
Just let go and let God.
actually, I don't have it anymore, but for a long period, I had that, what they call white coat high blood pressure, where you go into the doctor and it's up. So I tried meditating while I was in the waiting room, and then I was waiting for the doctor to come in. 6 months, nothing. So I just gave up, and eventually the stuff went away.
Have you tried Serenity Now?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Serenity
yeah,
now.
I know how that works. You blow up.
That's
So then,
fun.
okay,
I
well,
just don't believe
let's say meditation does work.
Yeah, it
Maybe,
does work for some people.
some people could lower their blood pressure.
Yeah.
So,
They do. They do.
can we take, as atheists or secularists, how would we take what works, how would we extract that, and remove that from the Buddhist?
Oh, it's really easy. A lot of
surroundings.
people have done it. They just concentrate on anything that they feel like a word picture,
Yeah.
anything like that, and they just use those techniques. You breathe out through the nose and breathe in, or something. Maybe it's the other way around. I can't remember. It's actually Herbert Benson, who actually turned out to be kind of religious, but his first book, I think what's it called?
Relaxation response.
The relaxation response. He left the religion out of it, basically. And that's not a bad book, apparently.
But the Buddhists would ultimately say the reason that works is because you're letting go of yourself. You're giving up your worldly cares, and that's why this state of nirvana, this relaxation state occurs.
Well,
The state of nirvana
It isn't
is
just
so,
the
is so
breathing
much
or-
deeper than that.
I think that they're wrong, because why are people able to lower their blood pressure,
Yeah.
let's say, by just using the kind of secular
Yeah.
technique?
Yeah, in some way, I think
It's silly.
they turned that physiological response into a religious or to a metaphysical belief.
Well, I think that it went hand in hand originally. I mean, I think some of these, teachers and holy men, as it were, that were wandering around, came up with these techniques,
But see,
and it worked,
my concern is that, say if an atheist meditates, they'll say, a Buddhist would say, you see, you got that from Buddhism. That's our Buddhism that you're practicing when you're meditating.
Well, I mean, what can I say?
Except for
I mean,
one minor thing, I don't believe in karma, and I don't believe in reincarnation.
Well, reincarnation believes in you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know,
Like Jesus
does it
believes.
hurt to borrow something?
No, I don't think so, but we're going to be,
I mean,
I think as an atheist, we might be, accused of, well, you're really just practicing Buddhism, you're really just doing what the path, you're on the path.
okay.
They
Let them
need
say
to-
that, let them believe that. I mean, that is their belief, if that's where they found peace. And I don't think it's productive to be a religiosity. To me, is sort of like self-deceit. But
That's a problem, yeah.
but the fact of the matter is, I'm not sure that left to their own devices, many people could do any better. Some people honestly believe if you don't think Santa Claus is watching, you're not going to behave yourself. I mean,
It's interesting, because we were just arguing about, you were arguing with my son's spouse and my grandson.
Or whether that Santa should be promoted or not? Is that what
No,
you-
not Santa, remember, they were talking
Oh, that
about
God,
religion,
that
and yet
people need
neither
God.
one of them are believers.
Well, that's a whole nother lecture, but
Yeah.
whether God is a necessary fiction, a useful fiction for people. And they said, well, it isn't for us, but for all of those primitive
People.
criminals. That's very
it's what we'll try when we think no one's watching. So if you can believe someone's always watching,
Well, that's the trouble,
That's
though.
right.
See, that's why people think that atheists are immoral, and I think because they're maybe a little afraid, but they know what they're doing, like that's immoral, even when they think God's watching. They figure that we atheists must be really worse, because we're not
Yeah.
worried about it. I think that's part of the problem of, their negative feelings toward us,
oh yeah, I've heard the straw man arguments just about how if you're not a believer, there's just no sense whatsoever in atheism. There is a concept that kind of fascinates me, and that is, we talk about evolution, talked about, and let me say, before I even get into that you've made a pretty good case to me that Buddhism is a religion, and I think that was kind of the goal.
Yeah, one of
Based
one
on
of
what
the
you
goals.
laid down there, it
Yeah.
really looked
Yeah.
like it to me.
Yeah.
But in general, I think that, how do I say, religion conforms to at least some of the rules of evolution and survival of the fittest. Buddhism doesn't seem as mainstream as Christianity or Judaism. There have been a million religions, and the fittest survive. And so, what are those
Are they the
characteristics?
fittest, or sometimes are they the most deceitful? I'm not sure.
If deceit is what causes you to survive, then they're the fittest,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Okay.
whatever characteristic it is.
Okay.
If it's strumming a heartstring that everyone has, then you've got a broad demographic.
It's fit.
You know,
Okay.
I mean that is fitness. So I do believe that out of all the religions, we're only left with a few that were. I believe the same thing is true with any given church. You look in the neighborhood; these mega churches have more fit business plans.
They're going
et cetera.
under, though, some of them.
A lot of them
Some
are
are
going
not
out.
doing well.
And then they're being absorbed by other ones
Yeah.
which are growing.
Yeah.
So just like any population of animals in the wild, you know, the weak ones limp along and die, and
Well, I think what's happening with the mega churches is that they're offering what the Catholic Church used to a long time ago, a lot of great music,
Yeah.
a lot of great theater in a sense, and this is kind of what people like. Does it have anything to do with any kind of belief system? This prosperity doctrine that a lot of them are promulgating has nothing to do with original Christianity at all. So here's evolution.
Yeah.
yeah, we change our message to fit the market.
Religion has evolved,
Yeah.
and
Tailor
they're,
to the market.
they've rebranded themselves as
And
it
the
were.
unfit ones die
Yeah.
if they don't adapt, if they
Yeah.
don't mutate,
Yeah,
they die off.
yeah.
Well, I see that really applies to these systems of
Oh, yeah.
belief. And the ones that survive best are strumming something that we need as humans, some yearning
Maybe.
we have or
Can't
something.
we live without it, though?
Say,
Feuerbach,
powerful religion.
the German philosopher, had a thought thinking about that. He had many thoughts on religion, but one of them was that we're aware, really underneath, almost it's just beneath the conscious, that we can be better people and we can live better lives, and it's like very difficult to change and to be able to bring that about. So he thinks that as out of almost laziness or like kind of this thing, we project these things onto a God that has all these qualities. He hated religion, by the way.
Yeah, I could-
Yeah, but he really thought it was like part of the human thing to throw that off, to throw that ability off.
And that helped humanity as a whole out? Or it
He
harmed
didn't
them?
think it. He thought it harmed them ultimately.
Oh, yeah.
He thought it was ridiculous.
and
Because you're
Is-
not recognizing the ability in yourself.
because they're
to be
not
able to do
doing
it.
it then.
So in
They're
its
not
place,
making
what would he
things better.
replace it with?
That he never said.
Okay.
That he never said. That's the problem.
Because I think that, again, I think that religion is what makes people behave while other people are watching.
Yeah, well, that's the trouble. Sometimes, but it also makes them, like very intolerant while other people are watching. It makes them like burn heretics. It makes them like
Yes.
hate gays.
To fit in. to,
Yeah, we could go on and
Yeah.
on and on. I mean, it's pretty hateful.
What about ritual in Buddhism? Is that an important component at all?
Oh yeah, because they have all these, they have all these meditation things and what have you. They don't just go in and I don't know, like say hi or whatever. I mean, they sit and meditate.
But is
Or there's some chanting. There's some groups that chant
Yeah, there's
too, rather
if
than
you've ever been
meditate.
to a Buddhist gathering,
We've been.
and
confess?
it has a definite, a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Which
Actually, Jim went to one that was more structured than I did. So,
Yeah,
so
it
tell
was
him
it was
about
in
it.
Ann Arbor, the Ann Arbor Buddhist Center.
They're pretty nice people. No,
And,
they're not bad.
They're not evil, but they have a ritual. They read, the leader reads something, and then there's some chanting, and in a language that is, who knows what, I don't know what it was.
They use their Roshi or whatever. He's originally Japanese.
So
It's
it
like
must have
heavy-
been, in Japanese or something. And
Jim said
there was,
something.
but it was some koans or so, whatever, and they reviewed whatever, it reinforced what he was talking about. Okay, and then they, let's see, after that, oh, there's a meditation. Then you go into meditation. The whole congregation goes into a meditation.
And is it a guided meditation?
Bong. There's your
That's what Jim
meditation. Start your
hates it.
meditation.
And what did you do?
You better sit there and meditate,
Or
or you,
or
you
just
know,
be
you
quiet.
can't move.
Look
Just
at the
be-
women?
Well,
You can't do
you better do that out of the corner of your eye.
You know, one thing I think they would allow you to do is clap with one hand.
Oh, yeah, like the
I
koans.
think.
Yeah, do that.
Those
And that
koans.
goes on for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then there's a bong,
So that sounds like a religious.
and
Sure.
another chant. He leads a chant, and then it's coffee time.
Doesn't that sound like a religion? Sounds kind of Unitarian. We used to go to the Unitarian church. Coffee time.
Or fellowship.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's a sermon broken up into 3 parts
Okay.
with
or,
some.
or a religious ritual broken up into
And,
3.
and then there's with the chanting and
But
so
it's
forth.
different with each group too, you know. I met this lady at the Young Society, and she was a psychologist, and she had been like a Catholic, and she said that she really lost so much when they changed the service over to English. Because she loved the Latin and the you know, the pronouncements and everything, and she thought there was much more to it because she really hadn't followed it in English. And she said that seeing what it really was, it was like nothing to her anymore, and she really hated it. And she,
Yeah.
And it's all
did you
magical.
see the sad kind of thing that today was the Muslimish meetup? And how careful
Oh
they
my
have to be about
God.
letting people in?
Yeah, there's a new meetup for former Muslims.
Muslims,
Former
I saw that
Muslims
even
only,
though-
only, you
Yeah,
can't, you
you
know.
can't
go
join.
on.
No, they said former Muslims
lead.
and present Muslims and those.
Yeah, just,
Yeah.
people that wanna talk about, you know, they want the truth where it might lead them, the deists,
Yeah.
theists, you know. Yeah, but they're being so careful because, you know, if you've left that religion, you're an apostate.
Yeah,
So, you know.
And there are many people in the religion who believe that if
There's-
you step outside, you're dead.
So you have
You're
to
worse
meet
than a
with one of
Christian,
the, you know, one of the officers or whoever, you know, and he has to approve you, and then he will take you to the meeting, and that's the only way you can come to the.
Blindfolded?
I don't know, but
In the trunk of a
we
car?
know the guy, Sam, he came to DAM sometimes, but he attended a lot of the CFI lectures when Mark was CFI and he had those good lectures. So
I don't remember him.
Sam, he didn't come to DAM very much. He went to CFI more.
More,
A nice guy. He's an elementary
Principal, assistant principal.
assistant principal
Yeah.
like Jim, so they had a lot to talk about. So Jim spoke with him a lot. He's a nice guy, a former Muslim, was really into, you know, Darwin and, you know.
Well, I think that almost all Muslims
It's- he's
are nice
starting it.
people. They're just, I mean, it's the few loud ones, like in the Christianity, it's the KKK or the Nazis or whatever, the skinheads. It's very rare to find the guy who's going to kill you who's a Muslim. And
Well, there's more of them
so
than
I think it's a good thing that these guys are getting together and starting to say out loud and come out of the closet and say, no, this is not who we are, we're
Yeah, well,
peace-loving
actually, Sam
people
is
who-
not. Sam is an atheist, you know. But I
Oh,
mean,
yes.
you know, he wants it open to everybody. He's a nice guy, and I mean, you know, I felt really sad when I read like how they have to do it so surreptitiously. But I would be scared too. You know.
Can you speak about the Burma Buddhists, the Buddhists in Burma, Myanmar? You know, there's
no, other than what you know, there's a lot in that book, Buddhist Warfare by Jerison, and it's in the bib. And if you want to read about them a little bit, you know, you'll get like kind of a shock.
because they're fighting with the Muslims
Yes.
and maybe some other ethnic
Yes,
groups.
yeah. You see, that's what Jerison and his colleague have said, that they're not peaceful.
I know something about Burma from
Ah,
way back. Back in the 60s, the Army taught me the Burmese language
oh, really?
when I was...
No kidding.
Yes.
wow.
It's actually, it's Myanmar.
Myanmar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, you blend the M and the Y like Pyongyang or something.
Oh, yeah.
Or the English word mute. You know, you could think of it being spelled M-Y-O-O-T, mute.
Huh.
Yeah, Myanmar comes across about the same way.
And is that the correct name for it today?
No, I wouldn't say so. It's enough. Well, that's their official name. Yes. You don't address the ambassador as anything but the ambassador from Myanmar.
That would make sense.
That was just an old name that somebody found in the government to glorify the union, the alleged union of all these warring tribes.
Do you know anything about the Buddhism there?
Not a lot. No,
Okay.
not a lot. But there's an ethnic group, the Burmese, the Burma, and there's the Chin, and there's the Kachin, and there's the Karen.
Oh my gosh.
Are they all fighting?
And these same ethnic groups spill over into other adjacent countries. I mean, we have some of these same
Oh,
groups
yeah.
in Thailand or, Laos,
Like the
or
stands,
something like
they go across the borders.
Yeah.
The clans, the tribes.
Right.
The
So-
borders are drawn, but it's dividing the tribes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah,
draw this border of Burma, but that's what's there. It's completely artificial. The monks I don't really know much about. The Burmese, the Buddhist aspect of Burma.
Is it suffice to say that they're Buddhists in name only if they say they're soldiers killing in the name of Buddha?
No, because they're
I mean-
compassionate. They're going to bring peace to the world.
But Buddha never said that. is
No,
what
of
I've heard.
course he never said that, but,
So they're
but-
kind of not really following
well,
his
I
teachings.
mean, Jesus
when-
didn't say a lot of those things either,
That's true, a lot of it in the Old Testament. But
Yeah, well, he didn't say God is my co-pilot either. Or,
he's my wingman.
yeah.
Exactly.
But I never heard that the Burmese Buddhists were particularly militaristic until just recently I saw some news stories
Yeah,
that
Yeah.
implied that
Oh, yeah.
at least some of them were.
Yeah,
and they're attacking the Muslims who are the minority.
yeah, yeah.
They are,
This does not
the
surprise me. This does not surprise me.
That's just human xenophobia and religion. Humans like to justify whatever
Yeah.
they do by God told me to do that, so that's what they're doing.
Well, see, that's why I dislike religion, because I feel it intensifies those feelings.
It may. I was thinking, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about how would I compare this to eras of pure communism, where there were at least some people who were inspired by dedication to communism. It's the future of mankind.
Sure.
Beautiful idea.
And
If it only,
yeah.
Didn't work, but
if only.
Was it much different for them? I mean, you wouldn't want to say that was a religion, although some people try to say communism was a religion, but I wouldn't want to say that.
almost all
Isms.
ideologies, like, they have a tendency to be taken too far by many of the
Yeah,
opponents.
I would agree.
but even if you just look at the stated claim of Buddhism, the idea is that you're supposed to give up yourself, your individual drives, ego,
Well, they don't believe there is
your
a self,
identity.
really. What there is just this accumulation of,
Yeah. So I
fantasy.
even think on its face, it's invalid. Just as I would say the same thing about pure communism or pure Marxism. Well, even on its face, I think it's something to abhor. It's not something I would
It
want.
sure is something strange, isn't it? It's not at all like anything I have ever felt intuitively. But then maybe my thinking was formulated by early Christian upbringing, where I was immortal after all. I mean, so that made me important, you know. Whereas the Buddhists, it's like a candle going out. You finally just, oh God, thank goodness I can
Well,
let go and go
it's
away.
emerging
Go to
though with
somebody
this
else.
universal cosmic thing, if you ever make that, if you ever get to that,
Yeah.
because you have to, get to some point of enlightenment to achieve this nirvana. Either that or you're just gonna be in that rebirth cycle.
In the beginning of your lecture, you talk about Siddhartha, And he is the Buddha?
He is the Buddha,
Okay.
yeah.
So he, once he reached nirvana,
Yeah,
then he qualified as the Buddha? Would
yeah,
that be
more or
accurate?
less, yeah. Well, he went
I mean-
around with this new idea.
So Hermann Hesse wrote a novel called Siddhartha.
Yeah.
So, and I like that.
Actually, I
in
didn't
and of
read that
itself.
novel. I read The Glass Bead Game.
Okay. Well, so I'm always confused when I hear that word Siddhartha. Was Hermann Hesse thinking of this man?
Yeah, he was probably playing with it. As I say, I didn't read that novel. I read the one that everybody read, The Glass Bead
Okay.
Game. Then I got sick of him and I never read it anymore.
All right,
Yeah.
I have Siddhartha here if you want.
Okay, now thank
It's a
you.
good read. But now, when you said nirvana, that Buddha achieved in the Siddhartha Gautama
Well, yeah, he
guy
didn't achieve
achieved
he didn't achieve
enlightenment.
nirvana. He achieved enlightenment.
Enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't
But he
nirvana.
decided, yeah, it wasn't nirvana. Nirvana is this like blending with this cosmic consciousness. And nobody ever explains that to my satisfaction. You know, they always say, you know, you Westerners don't understand it.
Well, my understanding was there's really only, in the major religions, there's only two people weren't human: Jesus, something more than human, and
Yeah.
Buddha. Those were the two guys that
Well, Buddha
transcended
was
humanity
really, yeah, but he
somehow,
was really a human.
till he gained enlightenment. Then he was not susceptible.
But then he was
to-
still a human.
But the folklore was that he walked at birth. Something about that. That he
That I
had some
don't
metaphysical
know.
powers.
The story was that,
Yeah,
the
stories.
story was that, and I think it's very metaphorical, that he was a prince in a very wealthy province, and his father didn't want him to like see any suffering,
ugliness or suffering.
and
right?
and then when he was older, you know, I think he saw somebody die, and he saw somebody old, and he saw something, you know, it's all metaphorical, I think.
He chose truth over the ugly.
Yeah.
What is
dishonest
supposed,
lie.
what is supposed to have happened to his spirit? Is it still around, flopping around body to
I
body?
think that it merged with the universal consciousness.
Isn't
It's
that
not the Dalai Lama.
nirvana?
Yeah, that is nirvana, once you've achieved that. But it doesn't mean, well, I guess you could say it could be a holy man, but he'd only, you know, he wouldn't be divine, I don't think. I think,
But we
I
would,
think some Buddhists would not say he was divine.
we would say he achieved nirvana though.
Yes, they probably would, yeah. It depends on what sect you're looking at.
That's my
Remember, the Zen had these great ideas, which, you know, some of them were wonderful if they had carried them out. Like, you know, they would say, like, when you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha, because you're not supposed to have a god. In other words, it was metaphorical, you know. So if you think you're meeting God, you should, like, get rid of it. But there was all this other stuff.
You mentioned the population growth would prohibit the transmigration of the soul.
Right, but
because
there's
it'd
a lot of them, if you recall my thing on immortality, that, you know, a lot of them have made up all kinds of things. you
So
know.
like, it was like there's this purgatory or waiting room.
Yeah, right,
for you
there's
to
this
get a
waiting
soul?
room where you're waiting to
Is that
be
in Buddhism?
reborn. Yeah, it was some proponents, but that's not really, you know, like pure Buddhism. The pure Buddhism and Hindus really believe that there's this, you know, kind of like waiting area. But then you notice and then the other ones say that, you know, that there's that instant when the dying person releases energy and it goes into the mother's womb and you have this new life. So you see, they don't explain it to any extent. And
Well,
then
they
they always say we don't understand it.
They believe in a static world at that time in history.
That's the thing, yeah, because they believe that souls were always there.
Yeah, it extended infinitely far in the past. The
Yeah.
population never much changed.
Yeah,
And things now are the same way they were 1,000 years
Yeah.
ago, just different faces.
see, there always were souls.
And if you have a multiverse, maybe they're coming from another universe.
Well, actually, some
math works.
proponents,
Yeah.
like New Age, and even some that are kind of like soft Buddhists have said that, or soft Hindus or New Age. Yeah, they say that. No,
Soft
I'm
Hindus.
serious. Yeah, well, this is the only way I could describe it. You know, moderate or whatever. But they say things like that they're from other planets.
Okay.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Interesting.
Because they don't have, where are they going to find all these souls? You know.
No end to this.
Can I ask a question? I've seen a parallel between the story of Siddhartha, attaining enlightenment, becoming the Buddha, and the movie Matrix.
Oh,
You've
yeah,
got a
yeah.
guy who's living the pretty lie, but he's not satisfied with the pretty
Yes.
lie. And they say, do you want the red pill or the blue pill? And he says, no, I'm going to do the god-awful truth. Give me the red pill.
Yeah,
And then he finds himself in a world, and he finds out that this world is an illusion, just like the Buddha. And he transcends that illusion. And he becomes an enlightened being within the Matrix.
well, because
This was the story of Buddha.
the Matrix was like, really New Age,
The
yeah.
illusory world.
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
It was also like very postmodern. They were picking up Baudrillard's ideas, the French philosopher, because he talked a lot about this construction of reality, and that we're all living in this like false constructed, like symbolic order. Lacan, actually, a French psychiatrist, said that first. But Baudrillard hated Matrix so badly, he just disavowed anything about his ideas being associated with that movie.
Is that right?
Yeah, he really hated
But
it.
he was part of the story then.
Well, I mean,
How it
they
came about.
took those ideas and then they made them into a kind of a new agey kind of thing,
I dispute that. I don't think the Matrix is new age.
Don't you? I
No.
really do. I
Same
really
old
do.
story?
What is
Same
it?
old song.
The first movie I thought was
But we're-
okay, but
Why did it resonate with so many people? Is it a retelling of an ancient story?
it gets silly like by the second movie when they're all drumming and they all have this like shared consciousness. Remember?
Yeah, it gets magical back then. At
Yeah,
that
it
point,
gets
yeah.
like gets silly.
They're
like
like in
that
the real
energy.
world with magic. They're no longer in the Matrix with
Yeah,
magic.
the first movie I thought was interesting because I was like really steeped in French philosophers at that time. So I said, "Oh my God, this is French philosophy." I don't believe this,
But maybe that is why it appealed to so many Western.
A lot of
People,
people were
because
in Pomo at
They
that
had
time,
heard
the
this
postmodern.
Buddhist
Yeah.
Mhm.
philosophy of the same thing, as
Yeah.
the authentic self, trying to reach that
Yeah.
authenticity.
Yeah,
It's well put, authentic self.
Yeah, well, that's right out of the New
That's for
Age, dogma. That you have to be authentic, right? Sounds good to me. I mean,
well, but Heidegger thought that too. So I mean, it doesn't just the New Age.
well, he's 20th century.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so he would Sartre. These are the forerunners to the popular culture.
They really believed, yeah, in trying to find authenticity. Where I say, well, most of the Buddhists would say that there's not really a self.
Yeah.
So the authentic self is not self.
Right, yeah, that's what they would say. And they would say until you can reach that point when you meditate properly.
But there's just no evidence of that, of this collective consciousness.
It's not collective really, except
What
the
is it?
nirvana thing, but
Yeah.
on like, friends have tried to explain it to me and I've read it too and I don't really get it, but it's kind of this thing that once you've meditated enough and you achieve some kind of wisdom, you see things properly, like you see trees, not through the idea of the fantasy, but you see the real tree, and you see.
But that's Plato, isn't that?
Yeah, in a way, but it's different. It's different. It is different. It is
That there's a
because
true form.
yeah, but those
Then
are
we're not
forms, and they're somewhere else.
Yeah.
They're talking about just things that are on Earth, like you can see that tree properly. You can have sex properly, okay? I mean,
So
because you
meditating,
don't have all these fantasies. You don't
Is
have
that
all
what'll
these,
do it?
yeah, sex
So they write
properly,
about these atheists, what they do.
yeah, bowel movements properly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm serious.
But that reminds me, another thing is that Buddhism is, claimed to deny or to denigrate sex and eating as well. The pleasures of eating, the pleasures of sex,
Sure,
Are
because you
also
get
tied
attached to those pleasures. That's
to the
what they
real
mean.
world.
But they enjoy things, but
and that's
not
where-
with an attachment. That's the trick.
Not with an attachment, whatever.
Well,
that
in
means.
other words, like, if you were born rich, it's okay to have your things, if you don't want to go all the way and become like a really, you know, ascetic Buddhist, but you shouldn't be attached to them. In other words, if they went away tomorrow, you wouldn't care.
But this, the criticism of vegetarianism, this that sometimes I hear is a self-denial similar to the self-denial in Buddhism that says, you know, you should not be attached to, say, eating meat. And that's where they think that vegetarianism, or vegetarians like myself, would be coming from, that this is some kind of a denial, that it's it's truly you know, a religious philosophy, that you're denying yourself something for this spiritual gain.
Well, you just have to explain it to them.
But the Buddhists, do they see, is that how they see vegetarianism? That it's not just about not killing animals, but it's also sort of a detaching or a self-denial?
No,
of
no,
material?
most of them see it as like, you know, killing life.
Yeah, but when it comes to enjoying sex, they would say, no, you should not
Be attached to it. They
be
don't say
attached.
really not to enjoy it. But
But
they're,
It's
they're-
attaching to smoking cigarettes. It's attaching to
anything.
beautiful paintings.
Yeah,
That's all you want to look at is beautiful paintings.
But
It's
taking-
becoming so attached to things
yeah.
that you can't let it go.
Yeah, there was a lady that used to come into my bookshop, and I felt so bad because she became a Buddhist. I mean, actually went to live in a monastery, and she used to, you know, sell me her art books, and she sold me her final batch, which was a lot of them, at the end, because she was giving up art. I mean, she wasn't a very good artist, but I felt so sad for her. I mean, well, I
Good for
mean,
the art world, though.
well,
Passionate atheist?
well, I mean, I felt so sad for her because she was like, you know, dressed in these saffron robes, I think from the Tibetan, I think, aren't they the ones that wear the saffron? And, you know, she had become like, you know, otherworldly almost. It was really sad. She was giving up things that she loved, like her art and things.
For something else she loved.
Yeah, for something else she loved, I hope. I never saw her again. I mean, you know, because I sold out my bookshop, you know, couple of years later. So I don't know what became of her.
Can we go back to that distinction of suffering? So there's, I believe his concept is that suffering is due to attachment.
Yeah,
And that as long as you're not attached, you can have all kinds of experiences.
right.
I mean, I've seen those Buddhist statues, and that's one guy who enjoys a cheeseburger.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
There's
He's
no
gonna
doubt
tell
about it in
me.
my mind.
He's
So,
gonna tell me.
Yeah, he may not be attached to the cheeseburger.
But that's silly. You just think about it.
Does
If
that
you're
make sense?
if you're overweight, you're attached to eating. I mean, you know, come on. Unless you've got some kind of thyroid condition.
Well, he
so.
was the ultimate soft Buddhist. Did you ever poke that belly?
Yeah, I know. He's got that tummy, and it's a scream.
And he's so happy.
Yeah. Well, sure.
Is that the Buddha, or is that?
That is him.
That's
yes.
one of them.
Yeah, it's one of his manifestations. Probably the most popular. Probably because he's so cheerful looking,
Yeah.
you know, and kindly.
But to say not be attached, but you're indulging, I don't understand
You
that.
know how impossible that is not to be attached to pleasure and not to be attached to your anger. I mean, it's fun to be angry sometimes, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, they say, well, that, you know, then you are your anger, you know, like, it's not something separate from you. You are your
Yeah.
anger.
And
I just can't stand their ideas. It's so sad.
it doesn't seem to make sense, and it seems to deny a lot of human nature.
Yeah, it does. Actually, it does. It denies a lot because,
Psychology
Yeah.
and evolution,
yeah,
you know, as animals that
Yeah.
we are. I wanted to ask you more about what happened in Japan, because what was it specific, you know, about Buddhism that might have led to this militancy beyond the general statements?
well, when they attached themselves to Bushido, which
Which-
was similar, you
tell
know,
us
as I
that.
said, the two ethics.
Bushido, tell us what that was again?
Yeah, it's the way of the warrior. It's very important in Japan, or used to be. Yeah,
Did that come out of Buddhism? Or
no, that did not. It was like a separate philosophy, but they merged during that period, and it's ridiculous. I
To
mean,
serve a
Buddhism.
goal.
Yeah, Buddhism should have stayed, you know, separate from them, not merging with them and extolling the emperor and things. Buddhism was supposed to be, Zen Buddhism
Yeah.
particularly, was supposed to be atheist.
But was it because they politically thought this would be a way to spread Buddhism more, to be more relevant?
It looks like it. Nobody really knows their motives. I mean, when Suzuki came to the United States, he had a different tune. And it was how wonderful everything, was in Buddhism and how peaceful it was. That's why you probably saw how angry I am about him, because I read some of his books and I had friends telling me about what a wonderful man he was. Well, he wasn't,
Yeah.
because they didn't know about this background in Japan.
But this idea of, no self would serve a fascist state. That if you have no
Yes,
individuality,
yeah.
absolutely.
or you should let go
But
of
that
all
was
of your,
that was Bushido too, the
This
way of
would
the
be
warrior.
perfect,
You
you
serve
know.
the state.
to live under a dictatorship.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
To give up yourself.
Yeah, the soldiers, many of their places where they lived and where they ate and things were copies of the Zen monasteries, and the way they were set up too. It's almost like they let go anything that especially Zen. That's what really made me angry, because Zen was a cleansing of anything corrupt in Buddhism. Was supposed to be.
And they took in their own corruption.
Date for the origin of Zen?
Boy, that's a good question. I had it. No, I can't
Okay.
tell you exactly. I can look it up.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Whenever those idealisms are leveraged, though, to fulfill the purposes of those in power, you have to suspect some contamination, some
Yeah.
perversion.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't reflect what the true belief system was. It again just reflects that when someone believes in magical thinking, they can accept truth from.
But see, that's the
Without
trouble. When you
evidence,
start
without
believing
sensibility.
magical thinking, then you can start believing anything almost.
You are susceptible to being led
Yeah.
into right
Yeah.
down to
That's what's scary.
yeah.
We were talking earlier about people compartmentalizing
Yes.
their beliefs.
They really do.
And yes, I think they really do. I was thinking that it's mostly when religion is involved that happens. That's what you're compartmentalizing, the stuff that you're supposed to believe
Yes.
versus the stuff that actually guides your everyday life. And I hadn't realized that before I knew people compartmentalize.
Well, what else would you compartmentalize?
Well, I mean, you could be a serial killer, for instance.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would give you a little area to
They're on
compartmentalize.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you would be, how about that one serial killer? I mean, he was functioning everywhere at his church and
Family.
with his family and everything.
Who's it, Dahmer?
No, it wasn't Dahmer. It was, who was it?
The one in
They're all kind of charming.
Missouri.
They were all nice folks. That
Was
you'd
it the
never
one in
think-
Missouri who was the
Was it
water meter? He worked in the water department.
Or some kind of civic, yeah, he was
Oh, he
like,
was-
he
and
was
he
with
was-
the city government
Oh,
and
the
everything.
BT.
Ball
guy,
games
yeah.
with the kids.
Yeah, what was his name?
BTK was.
The BTK killer, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't remember his real name. Bind, torture, and kill. That
Yeah,
was him.
yeah,
He
he
picked
did.
his own moniker.
Yeah, he did. He did for a long time, and he got away with it. And
But-
he brought up a family and was a deacon in his church, I think, and good to his mother.
It's hard for me now that I think about it, barring a serial killer or something like that, for me to think of what I would compartmentalize if it weren't religion.
Yeah.
Would it be, gee, I actually do like the Three Stooges, but I'm not gonna tell them. I don't know. It would be pretty minor compared to what we do with religion.
Kinky sex. Some people compartmentalize
I
that. They don't
suppose.
want to talk about it.
Being John Malkovich
Oh my God!
and
that
Buddhism.
movie again.
You have to explain to me the relationship. Did the writer, was he influenced by Buddhism?
Sure.
This movie. I don't know
He's
if you guys have
influenced
seen
by
this
all
movie.
the new ideas in the air. Spike Jones.
But specific, I mean, if you could
Yeah.
speak to the movie, which Jim, Mary, and myself saw recently again. The idea of soul and transmigrating into somebody else or another body, and completeness and all of that.
But they never like did it in any kind of
So,
like intelligent way. You
but
know?
was it a criticism maybe of Buddhism, that this was just a fallacy?
I don't think so. I think he grabs onto contemporary ideas in a very hip way
So you just see it
and does
cynically.
a very hip movie. Yeah.
He didn't have any real statement about Buddhism in there.
I just that the idea was. I think he was showing how old current the idea was, and how
How
with
current?
it, yeah, in the culture, because that, you know, a lot of people in the, you know, in those levels were doing Buddhism before other people were.
Especially in Hollywood, yeah.
Yeah, and yoga. Now yoga is spread everywhere.
Are you guys aware of the movie? What
I
the
am, but I
story
never,
is?
I never
Oh, that's
drew
a- it's a hoot.
correlation
It's
to
well worth
Buddhism.
watching.
I've seen it. I
Have you
thought
seen
was-
it? Isn't it who?
Yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah,
I thought it was more like a possession.
yeah.
One spirit possessing
It kinda
another's
was.
body.
That's
So I
what
didn't
John
link it to
Malkovich
Buddhism.
felt about it.
Yeah, being possessed.
In the
Yeah.
movie.
But the goal was to live forever, right? The guy
Yeah,
didn't
moving
care.
from body to body.
Yeah, the old man didn't care it was John Malkovich. He just wanted to live forever, right? So he and his friends entered John Malkovich's body at the end, right?
If I had a chance, I would do that too.
Somebody else's body?
Yeah, I would want to live forever. Why not?
Well, besides the ethics of
Well, I mean, I know it was
Yeah.
legally. You made a very good point that you have a legal right to do that.
Someone else's
Can you
body.
still wake up and say you're a good moral person?
yeah. I mean, I have
Probably
to.
not, but I would like to live forever. Sorry.
Yeah.
See, that's what they say about we atheists.
I appreciate
No
your
morals,
honesty.
no ethics. Yeah, I'm being honest.
I mean, I really need to go back now that I learned more about Buddhism and think more about that movie again. And if you guys have seen it, maybe
Well, you notice
Yeah, the
that
Matrix,
that
obviously.
Matrix a little
philosophy
bit, too.
professor talked at some length about the lack of self, kind
But-
of, and
but-
you end up in solipsism, and I think that was very solipsistic. Each character,
what is solipsism?
that's like, you know, nothing exists outside of myself. I think it. It's almost like, like when John Malkovich is in the restaurant and everybody's
Everybody's
John
John
Malkovich and the
Malkovich,
menu
yeah.
is John Malkovich. Aren't we all like that? A great deal.
No?
But aren't we underneath?
But when these people
Well,
entered,
Oh, I'm sorry.
when the others entered John Malkovich, they didn't automatically become, themselves walking around. He was still John Malkovich in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
They had to take him over,
Yeah.
learn how to do that.
He was still John Malkovich at the end, though, really, with everybody else, even though he was looking like that owner of the business.
Well, because he could fool the others.
I'm not sure about that. I
Yeah,
think,
his friend,
yeah, maybe.
the other actor, can't remember his name.
Oh, Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen. He could fool Charlie Sheen into thinking he was still John Malkovich, right?
I'm not sure I'm not sure what they meant by that.
At
Remember,
the end,
there's all
yeah,
those
yeah.
consciousnesses in there. Why wouldn't Malkovich's consciousness be in there too?
Competing with all the rest of them.
Well, yes, but
I
losing.
think they were all cooperating.
But he had to be losing,
Cooperative, yeah.
otherwise
He was a
He would've-
receptacle, right? He was
he
just.
was a receptor. I mean, he didn't have control of his body anymore. He became a puppeteer.
Yeah, yeah.
He wouldn't have done that.
I'm not sure what they meant by that.
But if you look at it as this sort of twisted form of Buddhism, the movie might
well,
make sense.
I think that's why Spike Jones used that. I think he was using the Hindu and the Buddhist and all those ideas that are around that culture. Plus the Pomo thing about you're not really a self. I think that's why people like that movie so much, because there were all these postmodern ideas floating around, as well as Oriental things, which were very hip at the time.
I have to see that movie again now.
Yeah.
But I keep getting these visions.
We went to a lecture on it. That's why I'm bringing it up. The writer said that Malkovich was his first choice, and Malkovich agreed to do it.
So that's why they
So
said
it really
that.
was Malkovich, and obviously they had to rename it if it's somebody else. If
Yeah.
he wouldn't have done it,
Yeah.
they couldn't even use his
Yeah,
name
right.
at that point. But no, I think the movie worked so well because it was Malkovich.
I really, I felt that the movie worked well. But I really just hated all the characters by the end.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody was
Everyone
like in
hateful.
their own. you know, like dedicated to their own romantic
Yeah.
obsession.
But maybe this is like the twisted karma. This is like the anti-karma.
Yeah, it is
It's
in
like,
a way. Yeah.
I'm going to fulfill my evil self
Yeah.
in the next life.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
I'm going to go on to do even more
Yeah.
bad things.
Yeah, yeah, he couldn't stop the you know, the one character, the puppeteer. But even Lottie, his wife, who seemed kind of nice, remember, she became very
Nasty.
obsessed and was willing to kill, you know, the lady she loved. You know, they were all like that. As I said, the chimp is the only one that grew emotionally.
Oh, that's remarkable. That was remarkable.
So is
The
this
character with the most growth was the chimp
It hurt.
because he broke through his trauma
He had been
of
traumatized as
not
a
being able to
child.
untie a knot.
He couldn't untie his parents,
parents.
When these guys came to kill them. You know, they had
The
tied
hunters.
him up and then they killed him. So he was, we all knew he had a trauma, and she was taking him to a shrink and everything. And his stomach was upset sometimes, and he was just, but when her husband locked her in the cage so he could go off and be John Malkovich and with, it's, gets,
Make love to
yeah, but
Maxine.
anyway, he locked her in a cage, and the chimp actually figured out that he could untie her. You know, he broke through.
Catharsis.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
evolved.
yeah.
Wow.
Another
But they
step.
were all like locked in. I mean, they didn't have to be even locked into somebody else's consciousness.
They were
so,
locked into their
They were
own.
so locked in.
It
That's
sounds
why.
like a statement of how we all can, with the proper opportunity and temptation, fall from.
Doesn't take
moral
long to
state.
get obsessed.
Yeah.
So what should an atheist do when he's at a party and he meets this Buddhist, this guy who appears to be, you know, progressive, modern, young, and says, you know, you really ought to check out Buddhism because it's nothing like those other religions.
A lot of guys.
It's
are
really helped me with my life
A
and
lot
my
of
stress.
people are like that, and they have been helped.
Well, so what would an atheist say, or what might I say if I didn't just want to nod my head and say, oh, that's very interesting. That's very interesting.
Well, I
What
would.
would they say? What would I say?
Well, I know, because I've told people that, you know, I mean, the truth is, you know, well, no, I mean, I don't want to insult their belief system, so the truth is that I can't meditate, because it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So that solves that, I mean, right away. If I wanted to be, if I were more friendly with the person, and I have been, and it created problems in our friendship, which we hardly overcame, but it was, you know, that there's still this transcendent belief, and that I just don't have that, you know. But now the American Buddhists, a lot of them are saying, as I think I mentioned, that they're saying that, you know, oh, we don't pay much attention to reincarnation. Oh, that's not really part of it, you know.
But when they're trying to sell me, basically what they're trying to sell me, the atheist, on the idea of being a Buddhist. Or
Well, because they'll tell you it's atheist. They'll tell you it's atheist.
I want to be able to say, I think I'm just fine, just like as a plain old atheist. I don't need
Sure.
Buddhism. You know, oh, but the philosophy is so wonderful, you know, because it helps me just let go of all of my anger and my stress, and I can just live in the moment. Live in the moment is another
living
one.
in the moment.
Live in
yeah.
the moment, yeah.
And it would help you so much, Norm, if you would just try it. You know, so that's how I get that sales job.
Well, people say that, yeah, people say that, and they mean it because it's helped them. So, you know, I just say, you know, I'm completely unable to meditate, you know, and I'm not interested in it.
Okay.
And also, too, there's a lot of things. I mean, I don't want to give up my eyeliner.
You're attached.
Yeah,
You're attached to it.
I'm attached to my.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I am. I'm attached to my makeup. I'm attached to my clothes. I'm attached to my jewelry, and I enjoy it. You know, maybe you think I'm suffering, but I don't feel I'm suffering.
Because they want to take the moral high ground. They want to say, well, I'm sorry that you're not able to see the
Well,
wonder.
Sorry,
Of letting
and
go.
Christians say that to me too. They write me things on the
No, you're not.
Atheist Scholar.
I'll pray for you.
We just said that, you know, if you would just let God into your life, you know, God is there. Just open yourself up to Him. Don't sit there and say there's no
That's
God.
the
And
actual
act like
message.
you're profound. That's what they're sending me message.
Yeah. So I want to be able to confront a Buddhist in the same way I'd confront a Christian who's trying to proselytize me and say, this is the way, I want to share it with you, and give up your intellectualism because it's putting you in this prison, you know, this.
That's,
Give up your
I
attachments.
appreciate what you're saying, because yesterday a Buddhist came up and said the very same thing to me.
Really?
Now, which one should I believe more frequently, you or the
I see.
Buddhist?
I see what you're saying. That might be a good way.
And 2 weeks
I've
ago,
gotta-
I had a conversation with a rabbi, and he said exactly the same thing you just
Yeah,
said.
that's
Yeah.
a good
Which
point.
one of you should I
Yeah,
believe?
which one?
And then the self-help people, they say the same damn thing too.
Follow us or
Yeah, practically.
let go of your.
Yeah, or,
intellect?
well, they have a method, you know, if you follow this method,
yeah.
you'll
Oh, yeah.
whatever. You know,
Yeah, the
you'll
forum.
be successful or you'll be things, so actually, that's a good point, Jim, you could say that, you know, everybody's telling me that, so.
I keep getting the
you know.
same message.
The law of
So how do I know
attraction.
which one is true?
Yeah.
Mine is.
How do you know you're betting on the right horse? And
Yeah,
that's the way she says, I'm going to PhD next, you know, in this next year. And I go, really, in what? She goes, theology. I go, oh, so which one did you pick? Well, I'm a Baptist.
oh
And I
God,
said, well, how do you know you're betting on the right horse? And that's when the conversation ends,
oh
because
jeez.
how are you supposed to? Because I'm asking, well, so you've studied all of.
Well, she
Religion,
chose the
because theology-
one that probably,
To me,
Spoke to
theology
her.
is study all of them,
That's not
but it's not. It's study one of them, and without even knowing about the others,
Yeah.
say this is the horse.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This is I know I'm on the right track. And so, okay, well, that's my daughter-in-law's mom. I'll just have to
Yeah, no, those,
dodge those subjects.
yeah,
Next person.
Yeah.
yeah, next,
the seminaries aren't trying to sell you on the religion. They already know you're already sold on their flavor,
yeah.
and they're just taking you into ever more deeper labyrinths of discussion.
There's a lot of, like, now though, theologians, you know, that are kind of like half atheistic. It's very weird, like Mark Taylor and there's others. I mean, they believe there's something transcendent, but they don't, they've kind of discarded all doctrine. They're in a
Yes.
very strange
I don't know how it
Place.
is that
way
anybody.
they are. And a lot of the divinity school, not divinity schools, but theological schools now are like, you know, people are complaining about it. They're saying, you know, that it's again like Harvard Divinity back in the Transcendental thing was a breeding ground for like atheists and things. Things are changing. Because I have heard people say, you know, that like their father was an atheist but he prayed a lot. You know, and I don't quite figure that, but I think, you know, you and I have talked about that, Jim, and I think it's a form of meditation.
I think meditation probably has benefits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that they're actually, you know, praying to any
They're
God.
trying to direct their thoughts.
I think they're trying to direct their thoughts. I don't quite understand it really, because
Maybe
it
it's a
seems to
way
me
to-
if you're an atheist, why would you pray? But I think that they're talking to themselves and they know it.
Could be a way to find peace without having to accept a lie to get there.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm
yeah,
used to talking to myself to work through a problem,
yeah,
so
Yeah.
maybe that's what they're doing.
yeah. I
you
think
should
that
pray
that's
to
what they're
yourself.
Thought, would I
Almighty
answer,
Pete,
would I answer
for
the problem?
Pete's sake.
Yeah, that's good.
Good.
Well, I mean, the religions that have survived, it's like, I've read it before, and I guess I was more attenuated tonight. It's like, generally what they do is they offer like some kind of immortality, and the second thing, a sense of justice. So you don't just believe, but you know, I had a wonderful, very conservative history professor, Finley Hooper, and he was a classics history professor, and he used to say, don't believe any of that, the wicked thrive like green bay trees. I thought that was a beautiful expression. And, you know, but people, you know, how many times you hear people say what goes around comes around? But it doesn't come around
But that's
all
a
the time.
Buddhist idea, right?
Yeah, yes, it is. But I mean, does it really come around? I mean, I know a lot of people that do bad things.
Right.
So and they
There's no universal
seems to me
justice.
that they're doing just fine.
Absolutely. There's no universal.
I mean, I hope that they have a bad
But-
conscience, they have trouble sleeping at night, but I'm not even
I
sure
doubt
about
it.
that.
I doubt
I
that.
doubt that too.
So
I think that maybe.
sometimes it's true and sometimes it isn't, but if you've got a confirmation bias, then you're gonna
fine.
only see the times when it is
Yeah.
justice and say, see, there's proof of it. And
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, it's
But-
like Christians when they say miracles.
but didn't the idea of environmentalism come out of this, their metaphysical idea of interconnection, that we're all interconnected with each other, you know?
That's
we're
a
all-
new age idea,
That's
in a
not a
way.
Buddhist.
But you said
Kinda, a
Buddhism
little
was
bit.
you're reincarnated from other life forms, so you're really looking at, might have been you a few lifetimes
Yeah,
ago.
that's what they say, but like I say, that they also are pretty cruel to animals over there,
Yeah.
you know.
Animals
And they
are
weren't
tasty.
necessarily, I mean, I can remember, I used to do a lot of haiku. We even had a haiku magazine, and I can remember reading some work by Basho, who is a very nice poet, and, you know, some baby was just left out on a marsh, and, you know, his act of compassion was tossing it some bread, and that was it. He didn't take it off to an orphanage. I suppose there was no orphanage to take it to or whatever. So they have a different view again of compassion. The old timers. I thought that was weird. I looked at that, I said, oh gosh, you know. Oh, thank you so much for such a wonderful discussion, everybody. Been very nice. Yay, all of us. Yay, all of us.
We all come back as higher life forms.
Yes.